Hello, BookTube. Welcome to another MegaStuff video. Despite the fact that the last MegaStuff video that I made, the one yesterday, was grotesquely long, I heard from quite a few of you that you were happy to get a MegaStuff video, one of these big rambly things, these umbrella-type portmanteau videos where you just pour in everything that's of interest rather than make 10 separate videos, which I might otherwise do. So I thought I'd do another one. I'm going to try to keep this one under 30 minutes. And I'm going to break it down the same framework. So first we'll start, as all videos should start, not only mine but yours as well, with me. I mentioned that I had taken out recently a couple of older iPads. I have a first generation iPad and a second generation iPad. And the second generation iPad I used like the dickens. For 10 years I used that thing enormously. Photographs, document production, reading, a huge amount of reading, content consumption on YouTube and elsewhere. I used the daylights out of that thing. Reconfigured it, new wallpapers, everything. And I discovered I recharged both of those, and once I had them up and running, I was exploring them to see how usable they are in 2021. It turns out the original iPad, the first generation iPad, pretty much isn't usable. I can use it to read, but I can't do anything else with it. It's comforting in a way to know that I can use it to read, but that's all that it will do. It will do a bare amount of getting online to Google or something like that, but it crashes more often than not. And even the reading functions, the reading apps crash more often than not. So I'm going to retire that first generation iPad. And then I thought, okay, well, but the second generation iPad was a huge increase just in the operating system. It was a huge advance over the first generation iPad. So surely that is salvageable, especially considering how long you used it. It has so many memories infused in it. Good Lord. I kept a literary book blog, Steve Reads, for 10 years, more than that. And every time that I had a book that I wanted to talk about, I took a picture of that book with my fat basset hound, Lucy. And I remember her on the couch, her on the chair, her on the floor, taking pictures with her acting all pettish like a starlet, and sometimes, and other times not even knowing what I was doing. And all of those memories are bought up in that machine. And it still runs all sorts of things. It doesn't glitch when it goes online. It plays YouTube. It plays all sorts of other apps that I use for reading. It will access Twitter or Instagram, but it takes a long time to charge, and it's tetchy. It also drops out of things just at random, and that's no fault of that poor second generation iPad. It's just that its operating system is too old. It doesn't take updates anymore. It isn't refurbished anymore, and the baseline technology of the things that it needs to communicate with is simply moving on from it, slowly but inexorably moving on from it. There's a lot more functionality left in it than is in the first generation iPad. But when I was struggling with it, I was thinking, okay, but why are you doing this? Just for sentimentality's reason? You should never use technology because of sentimental reasons, especially when you want to get some productivity out of it. So I retired that as well. I put the first and second generation iPad on a shelf, out of reach, and I don't think I'll be going back to them. I don't think there's a reason to. Instead, I turned my attention to my more recent iPads. I have 3 more recent iPads that are all basically the same. I think one might be a little bit older than the other 2. They're all well within the range for new updates. They're well within the range for future-proofing. I think the main difference between the 3 of them is that one of them has an enormous amount of storage and the other 2 don't. I turned my attention towards those. I charged up all of those, but the more I think about it, the more I think, just the one device, just the one iPad. I have one iPad it's an iPad Air with the pogo prongs there that attaches to a Magic Keyboard that is really, really nice. It's this cloth textured keyboard. It works really, really well, and I was using that, and I was thinking, okay, well, the goal here, the holy grail, is always one device to rule them all. Wouldn't it be nice to have only one device that I use, and where I don't bounce between anything else? Just one device. And for a while, I thought that was impossible because I would certainly need my phone. as a phone. But thanks to the pandemic, most of the communication that I do with other people is Zoom. It's not calling on the phone. And then I thought, well, filming, but the camera on the newer iPads that I have is as good or better than the camera on my phone. And typing works really well. I love that keyboard more than any keyboard I've ever used. The one problem on my quest for one device to rule them all, is that the multitasking is lacking. The new iOS, the one that works on this iPad Air, supports a split screen, where I can have one thing happening there and one thing happen, and I can be working on another thing. But as far as I know, it only supports those two. As far as I know, I can't have windows open, 4 of them on a desktop, or maybe 6 on a desktop. Whereas on my MacBook Air, I can, of course, have multiple tabs open, and I can have multiple tabs playing at the same time. As far as I know, the iOS iteration that's the latest thing I can use on this iPad doesn't do that. And I'd be willing to bet that maybe the new iPads, maybe a 12-inch iPad Pro, would let me do that. Or maybe even now there's an operating system, some other operating system that I could import that would let me do that even on the iPad that I have now. The dream, I think what I'm trying to say is I'm triangulating closer and closer to the one device to rule them all. And I think that device might be a 12-inch iPad Pro with a Magic Keyboard that can multitask and do all sorts of other things. I think that might be the device that I'm angling towards, provided I can get a cloth keyboard. That's what this thing is. That's what it's called, a cloth keyboard. You can't really tell, but there's no space between these keys. There's an overlay of fabric over the whole thing. I love that. Absolutely love it. As you can tell I love it because of how much I've used it. I've worn out 2 of the keys already here. If I can find one of these, a cloth Magic Keyboard for a 12-inch MacBook or iPad Pro, it looks to me like the Magic Keyboard for the 12-inch iPad Pro that you'd ordinarily get in the course of things from Apple is not one of these. It has sort of a soft chiclet keyboard that I'd rather not have. If I'm going to be laying out the money, $150 for a keyboard, I'd like to have the one that I love. So the me part of the MegaStuff video for today is me continuing the search for the one device to rule them all. I think I know what it is. It's probably a ways off. The devices that I have now work just fine, but if that's the only thing stopping me from an iPad with a smart keyboard being my one device. It can make and receive Zoom calls. It can surf the web. It can record videos and upload them. It can generate documents. It's funner to type on this keyboard than on anything else. The one thing that it really can't do is multitask. It's not so good at multitasking. And for all I know, maybe it can do that, and I'm just not aware of it. But one way or another, that is the me part. Then the next portion of the MegaStuff video is the world. And unfortunately, you already know the story that I'm going to talk about for the world, because it's the story that's on everybody's mind in America today. We're in the middle in America of an absolute epidemic of gun violence. There's a mass shooting virtually every day, somewhere. And it's only the roulette wheel of chance that it hasn't happened to me and any other American that I know. And on top of that, we're also in an epidemic of police violence. And that's on everybody's mind because the man who murdered George Floyd is on trial for that crime. And I think is certainly going to be acquitted, which is going to lead to months and months of violent unrest in this country. Even if he isn't acquitted, even if he goes to jail, I don't think there's any chance that he will go to jail. He's on camera, dispassionately, sociopathically, simply executing someone. If you or I were on camera doing that, there wouldn't be a question of whether or not we'd be going to prison. It'd be a question of how long our appeals would last before we got a lethal injection. With his case, there's an open question in my mind whether or not he'll set foot in jail at all. And as if that weren't bad enough, it's not like the country declared a moratorium on gratuitous police execution of unarmed people while the trial was going on. No, those executions are continuing to happen, and one just did happen. It, of course, was caught on gruesome camera. The video footage has gone viral. It's unbelievably brutal to watch. A young boy simply being shot to death, simply being executed. He has his hands in the air. Doesn't matter how guilty he was a second ago. Doesn't matter how guilty he looked a second ago. When the cop opened fire on him, he was a completely no threat. And I realize it's a complex subject, but the solution is very easy. If you pick apart the so-called blue wall, if a police officer who opens fire on a civilian for any reason is liable to the same criminal penalties as they enforce on other civilians, they would stop doing it. If they knew that they couldn't kill people with impunity, they would stop killing people. It's the only reason that they do it is because they know they can get away with it. If they knew they couldn't get away with it, they wouldn't do it any more than you or I would. It seems very simple to me. But one way or another, and there's a legal concept as to why they can hide behind the so-called blue wall. There's a diminished culpability concept in law that simply needs to be abolished. That's all. It simply needs to be abolished. But one way or another, that is the world bit that I'm talking about. Once again, the world bit is the United States, but what am I supposed to do when I'm up to my eyeballs in this kind of gun violence all around me? Not only citizen upon a citizen, not only lunatic upon innocents, but also police upon citizens. And to know the inescapable inference to be drawn from any of this is that it could happen at any time. Naturally, when I see a report every single day about some new mass shooting, I think, well, what about some lunatic who loses it on the subway when I'm on the way to an early morning appointment? What about some lunatic who loses it just out at random when I'm out walking the bean? It could happen at any time to anybody, and that's no way. Anyway, I'll stop ranting now. That is the world bit. I'm sorry, baby. Oh, I was ranting, wasn't I? Oh. We had to walk up the street. We went actually to a place that, location, sort of a neighborhood where we'd never been before. I'd never been there with any dogs. Just totally new. We had no idea who we would encounter. It was quite a lot of fun. But anyway, we'll move on to the next section of your MegaStuff video, and that is YouTube. For YouTube, I don't have much in the way to report because the rabbit hole that I've gone down in the last 24 hours just to take a break between writing assignments has been odd and of no consequence to anyone but myself. The rabbit hole that I've gone down is to watch one clip after another of flash floods. I don't understand these things. The only reason that I don't try to defend it is because all these things are out there on YouTube to watch for free, and they would have been 15 seconds on the nightly news once a year if you were lucky. And now there's an endless bounty of these things to watch, and I'm naturally curious to see them. And you can watch. There are hundreds of videos of flash floods, both ones that are controlled, where they come right down a gully and into a culvert, and ones that are uncontrolled and sweep away cars or whatnot. I've been watching a lot of those. That's been my YouTube experience, and it's been a YouTube experience where you have that little shiver because you're watching stuff that you wouldn't want to experience. I wouldn't want to be anywhere near. I've been in flash floods near them, and they're terrifying. I wouldn't want to be anywhere near them. But the BookTube experience that I want to talk about very briefly again here is one that I did want to be a part of. I wasn't a part of it. I wasn't invited to be a part of it. Vin at Revenant Reads posted a video just a few minutes ago, just a little bit ago, just today, of film footage and a rapturous book haul that he had going to the Book Barn in Niantic, Connecticut. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, the Book Barn in Niantic, Connecticut is on the Connecticut shore there, right within sight of the leaky reactor. And it's one of the greatest used book destinations in the world. It is a mecca for used book people. It's 5 buildings. The main complex is 5 buildings full of used books. There's a koi pond. There are decorative little arches and bridgeways and trellis works. There's a petting zoo. There's an uncounted number of cats. The reason why the camera is bouncing up and down is because the bean cannot get comfortable. She's futzing all around. Okay, now she was trying to get comfortable right next to me, but now that's over with. So I tell you, it's terrible living with a diva. Anyway, the Book Barn is incredible. It's absolutely amazing. The prices are all completely reasonable. The paperbacks are usually all $1, at least they were the last time I was there. You can spend a day there. And that's just the main building complex. The 5 buildings, there's a little outhouse at the very beginning that's called Ellis Island. Those are where a lot of the new purchases are kept before they are sorted into their different sections. There's a whole building for murder mysteries. It's a gigantic amount of science fiction. And the Book Barn has spin-off locations in downtown Niantic. Niantic is a very small town. It's just a strip, just a road. But there are other Book Barn locations that also have genre spin-offs there. And Vin went with his family, and they looked like they had a wonderful time. They didn't pick me up at all. So I'll link to his video so you can, your mouth's going to water if you've never been to this place. I've been to the Book Barn a few times, many times. But I dream about going back. I hate the idea that I might never go back to the Book Barn. And naturally, thanks to BookTube, I know the perfect situation in which I want to go back to the Book Barn. I want to go to the Book Barn with Mark Richardson in his bright red truck, and I would like it if Jason Harrigan could join us all the way from Ireland. I don't know how that would ever happen. It was on schedule to happen in 2020 if the pandemic hadn't happened, but I still dream about it. I still dream that it would be possible to do. Somehow possible to do. Maybe Jason flies in from Ireland to Boston, stays at a B&B near Hyde Cottage overnight, then Mark drives down to pick us both up and head to Connecticut. Then we all drive with the Bean back to Vermont to stay there. I don't know how it would happen. Logistically, I would leave logistics up to Mark. Mark and his dad could probably plan the trip better than I could. But I dream about doing that because the Book Barn is an experience. To go to the Book Barn on a high summer day, they have complimentary tote bags because you know you're going to have armloads of stuff by the time you're done. To go there and just sort of browse all around with a couple of other dyed-in-the-wool book people would be so wonderful. Although it would have been nice to go with Vin's family if he had invited me. But he didn't, because he hates me, because I smell. I'll leave the video anyway. and then there is the reading section to finish up, the reading section of our MegaStuff video. And I want to start with an omission from last time. Last time I mentioned when I was talking about reading that I am slowly making my way through the Norton Anthology of English Literature. I got a 2-volume Norton Anthology of English Literature, and I reinforced them. They're not marked up by students in any way, and it's wonderful. This edition is wonderful. And a lot of you wanted to know more about that. This is the 4th edition that I'm talking about, and this is the 1st volume. And a lot of you also wanted to know where I was and what I was thinking about it. I'm taking my time with this. I'm going very slow. I took a long time with Chaucer. I took a long time with Pearl. The Old English, the poem Pearl is fairly long. It's one sitting to read, and I've never really paid it as much attention as I think it deserves. So I paid a lot of attention to it this time around. Took my time with Pearl. And I am, in answer to your question, up to Thomas Malory. I'm up to Le Morte d'Arthur. And I wanted to read you a bit from the introduction, just to give you a sense of the sheer scholarship that goes into this edition, the 4th edition. His book is attractive not only because it is the best and most complete treatment of the story of Arthur and his knights, but also because it is one of the greatest pieces of prose in English. Malory is the first English writer to make prose as sensitive an instrument of narrative as English poetry had always been. One has only to turn from a page of Chaucer's prose to a page of Malory's to be struck by the naturalness and lack of self-consciousness in the later writer. Indeed, Malory achieves in his prose that wonderful impression of simplicity that Chaucer achieves only in his poetry. No matter how extravagant the adventure Malory is recounting, he always manages to give it a hard base of realism. He's in particular a master of naturalistic dialogue, with which he keeps his narrative close to the earth. And both he and his majority of his characters are masters of understatement who express themselves in moments of great emotional tension with a bare minimum of words. The result is highly provocative to the reader's imagination, which is made, in a sense, to do the writer's work for him. This appeal to the reader's creative imagination probably explains why Le Morte d'Arthur brings forth such widely differing responses from its readers, who agree, perhaps only, in their affection for the work. I think you will agree that that is really, really good. And also, one thing that maybe you noticed, but I'll point it out anyway, is that in addition to being really intelligent, that's also eloquent prose. That's extremely eloquent prose. And I've been savoring that all throughout, because this thing is over 1,000 pages long. I'd say probably 400 of those pages are these editors writing like that about all of these works. I'm having it just a blast, working my way through this very slowly. So it's always the undergirding, sort of the soil of my reading. But then I also have the TLS. The TLS reached me yesterday. I don't know if you can make this out, but look at the shape that this is in. It was sitting in the pouring rain. And when I took it in, it was literally limp. It was soggy like a wet napkin. I just left it on a shelf to dry out. And it finally did. And one of the highlights of this issue, I always mention that one of the things I look for in any review organ is whether or not some reviewer has been commissioned to review a book that I was commissioned to review as well. There's a little bit of butterflies in the stomach there, because you're always wondering, are they going to see something that you didn't see? Are they going to notice something that you didn't notice? They're going to make a point that shoots apart your own review without knowing it? And in this issue, the headlining piece is a review of, as you can see, a review of Blake Bailey's biography of Philip Roth. And they got no less an authority than Elaine Showalter to do the review. That's a heavy gun right there. And at one point she writes, Bailey ends with an epilogue, but not a conclusion. How could he summarize the irreconcilable contradictions of Roth's life? Yet I'm disappointed not to have his opinions on some big questions. How did Roth's Spartan choices serve him as an artist and a man? Was he a misogynist? A woman hater? I don't think so, although he could never quite imagine how the world looked through women's eyes. Is Bailey's compassionate, but in his combustible moment, some reviewers have already used the unsavory details of Roth's life to make sweeping attacks on his art. Gulp. Is Bailey's compassionate and comprehensive book the biography? No other biographer will have known Roth so well, had so much unlimited access to his archives, had a chance to ask him rude questions, even to watch him as he lay dying. Future books will be readings of the life, interpretations, and arguments. He's big enough. Bring them on. That's terrific, and that's a shot across the bow as well, because I'm one of those critics who have used this opportunity, and I might add any other opportunity that comes to hand, to criticize Roth's work, to say, okay, we have the big authorized biography that we waited all this time for. Now that we've done with that, can we be done with this author? Can we just pack him away in mothballs? That's not going to happen, I don't think. But in addition to the TLS, there's also mail. So we've a couple of packages of mail here, and I'm really hoping, once again, for finished copies in the month of May. That's what I'm looking for here, is finished copies for May. The first one we strike out. First one is an advanced copy. This is for August. Good Lord. Oh my God. It's a million years away. This is August. Oh, how neat. All right, this is by Naomi Hirahara, and it is Clark and Division. Very pretty thing. And it comes with, the press kit is a little booklet. This is from the folks at Soho Crime. We saw a big book of theirs just the other day. So what have we got here? Early praise for Clark and Division. I really need a blurb sheet to... The first blurb is from George Takei, Mr. Sulu of Star Trek fame, who calls this book a moving, eye-opening depiction of life after Manzanar. The author has infused her mystery with a deep humanity, unearthing a piece of buried American history. Okay, well, George Takei liked it. That's no small thing. Wow, wouldn't that be a thrill to get a blurb from Mr. Sulu? So what do we have here? Edgar Award-winning writer Naomi Hirahara's stunning new mystery set in 1944 Chicago brings to life a hidden slice of American history, the fate of Japanese Americans after their release from mass incarceration camps during World War II. Oh, okay, well, that would explain George Takei, because his family was interned in one of those camps. So, 20-year-old Aki Ito and her parents have just been released from Manzanar, where they have been detained by the U.S. government since the aftermath of Pearl Harbor, together with thousands of other Japanese Americans. The life in California the Itos were forced to leave behind is gone. Instead, they are being resettled 2,000 miles away in Chicago, where Aki's older sister Rose has sent months earlier and moved to the new Japanese American neighborhood near Clark and Division, hence the name of the title. But on the eve of the Ito family's reunion, Rose is killed by a subway train. Aki, who worshipped her sister, is stunned. Officials are ruling Rose's death as suicide. Aki cannot believe her perfect, polished, and optimistic sister would end her life. Her instincts tell her there is much more to the story, and she knows she's the only person who can learn the truth. Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay, well, I'm not going to read this, obviously, until the end of summer, but that is really intriguing. Okay. All right, and then let's move on. This next one it is our last package. It's very light. It's probably not going to be a finished copy. Steve very much wants finished copies, but can't always get what you want. I'll take it. What have we got here? Yeah, all right. This is another advanced copy. This is for June. Oh, fantastic. Oh, I asked for this. This is a Sparks and Brainbridge mystery. This is A Rogue's Company by Alison Montclair. How wonderful. Fantastic. Okay, no pub sheet, but I already know this series and I like it. So business becomes personal for the Right Sort Marriage Bureau. That's all capital letters. That's the business that our protagonists are engaged in. When a new client, a brutal murder, and 2 kidnappings threaten everything that one of the principals holds dear. The year is London, 1946, so not far off from Clark and Division, but a very different tone. The Right Sort Marriage Bureau is getting on its feet and expanding. Miss Iris Sparks and Mrs. Gwendolyn Bainbridge are making a go of it. That is until Lord Bainbridge, the widowed Gwen's father-in-law and legal guardian, returns from a business trip to Africa and threatens to undo everything important to her, even sending her 6-year-old son away to boarding school. But there's more going on than that. A new client shows up at the agency, one whom Sparks and Bainbridge begin to suspect really has a secret agenda, somehow involving the Bainbridge family. A murder and a subsequent kidnapping sends Sparks to seek help from the dangerous quarter, and now their very survival is at stake. Fantastic. Well, I don't know that I'm blurbed on this thing, but I think we saw the previous one, A Royal Affair, on this channel. And I might have praised it then, but I love this series. If I hadn't read the series then, I've certainly read it since then. I can't wait to get to this. I will wait to get to this. I'm not going to read a June advance copy so soon, but there you go. 2 things from Soho, Minotaur and Soho, that set near the same time, but very different in tone. I'm just going to put them on the pile of advance copies. I am busy with the May book section of Big Canoe News. So I am looking for finished copies, and I am thinking about freelance reviewers and filling those pages. But these advanced copies will wait. They'll keep. So there you go. That is your MegaStuff video. There's the bean. That's your MegaStuff video for this Saturday. Well under 40 minutes. Good. That's under 30 minutes. Anyway, I will wrap this up for now, but I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.